All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here to our free non-dual meditation class this week. So we're going to do our usual format of we'll start with some relaxation, and then we'll proceed into a non-dual meditative exploration. And then we'll transition into a time for questions and answers or any kind of reports or sharings, troubleshooting, anything like that. And something new I want to do for this session is to issue a disclaimer or a kind of warning label, you could say. This is becoming more popular within meditation circles to really make sure people are aware of not just the benefits of meditation, but also the risks. And someone who was in our group last time who had some history of trauma was experiencing some activation in the body. And so that was a good reminder for me of, oh yes, even in these small doses, because we're really only meditating per se for about 15 minutes or so. But still, even in a small dose like that, if you have had a lot of trauma, it can be disorienting. You can experience discomfort in your body. And so I just wanted to, I thought I'm just going to issue some kind of warning label like that from now on at the start of the meditation, just to let you know that, yeah, it's possible you may experience some discomfort. And if that happens, please, do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, including just turning the meditation off. You don't have to finish it if you feel like it's overwhelming for you, and you can seek whatever kind of support you need. So without further ado, let's get started. So for this one, we are going to go ahead and close our eyes. So I'll invite you to do that. And get yourself into a comfortable posture that can support you for the duration of this meditation. And for meditation, it's helpful to have a balance between relaxation and a bright, alert presence. These are like the two wings of the bird of meditation, at least in this style. So to cultivate the brightness of attention, you do want to have attention to your posture and an extension of your spine, as if your spine is being lifted from the top of your head, sitting up straight, sitting with intentional and attentional presence. And then we want to balance that with relaxation, just like a guitar string. We don't want it to be too tight or too loose. So we find that balance point. So we kind of tighten it up by straightening up the spine and sitting up straight. And then we want to loosen it a bit. And the easiest way to do this is just simply to scan through your body and just noticing if you're holding tension anywhere. And just inviting it to relax. Certain parts of the body can store hidden tension. So I'll give you some little tips and tricks. One place is the shoulders. The shoulders can be hunched. They can be too far forward. So see what it's like to let your shoulders drop down even lower. Let them just drop down as if they're kind of being weighed down by bags of sand. And just letting them sink, not with too much force, but just a natural kind of dropping down. And also shifting back. So down and back. And that also opens up your chest and your heart, makes breathing easier. Another place is the neck. And the trick here is just to tuck your chin a little bit. Sometimes our neck is craned too far forward, which leads to strain. And so if you just tuck your chin a little bit, so you're kind of moving the neck back, not too far, but just a little bit, and you find it can kind of lock into a nice posture that's aligned and comfortable and not straining, relaxed. Then there's your eyes. So you might notice when your mind is very busy, the eyes can be darting around as if looking for something. And so it can be helpful to relax your eyes. Just let them float effortlessly, not focusing on anything in particular. Not trying to hold any particular eye position, but just a soft relaxation there. And then there's the forehead. So the forehead, when we meditate, sometimes can be subtly tensed, like you're trying to make the focus happen or something. So just notice your forehead and seeing if there might be a little knot there that you can just untie. Let your forehead smooth out and relax. And of course, the breath is a deep relaxation tool. So the more you can invite your breath down into your belly, letting your belly fill like a balloon on the in breath and deflating gently on the out breath. Nice and deep and slow, and just feeling your relaxation settling deeper with each breath. Okay, good. And now we're going to just gently shift gears into this non-dual exploration. And for this one, there is a particular posture that we're going to place our hands in a very slow and mindful way to see what it feels like as it comes together. So, however your hands are positioned right at this moment, I want you to just slowly and gently, mindfully shifting them closer and closer together and clasping them together into a kind of prayer like pose, the hands interlaced into each other. Just really gently just drawing them across, your lap or wherever they're resting right now. And so they're just meeting one another in this embrace and just noticing all the sensations of that happening as your fingers are coming together, lacing into one another. And just resting that clasping posture of your hands gently in your lap. And with your hands clasped together like this, I want you to direct your attention to your hands and first just noticing all the sensations that are there. So hopefully as you are bringing them together, you are activating all those nerve endings, feeling the touch and the pressure. And so you might just notice all the feelings between your fingertips or the senses of warmth or coolness. Just all the sensations that are happening with your hands and fingers as they are folded together, clasped together in this position, interlaced. Noticing in detail what's happening there. Okay, good. And having now noticed the sensations of your hands collapsed, we're also going to tune into the way your mind visualizes or constructs this experience. And we're going to play with that. And the first story I want you to impose on your hands is that your right hand is the one that's giving the touch, and the left hand is receiving it. So when your hands were coming together, maybe the right hand had more of a kind of dominant or giving role, and the left hand was more sort of submissive, receiving. See what it's like to impose that story on this experience of hand sensations. And notice how that story may change the feeling, the experience. The sensation plus the story leads to an altered experience. Now let's try switching it up. What if that weren't the story? What if the left hand were the one that were giving the touch and the right hand were receiving it? The roles of the hands have switched. If you can tell that story, see if the experience feels different. And notice perhaps how holding on to that story, that visual, entails some effort. You have to keep imagining it, and maybe there's some subtle tension required to keep that story in place, that is what is happening. These are the roles of the hands. And noticing that, let's give ourselves a break. And let's see what it's like to let go of the story of the giving or the receiving. And taking it further, letting go of the left and the right. And letting go further of the boundary line between your hands. Your mind may want to separate your two hands into separate objects. See what it's like to soften that boundary. If the boundary feels rigid, your imagination can help you. You can actually imagine, what if your hands were not separate? What if they were fused together? What if they were like sticks of butter that were just melting into each other? Whenever you get there, you may be noticing some merger of boundaries and maybe some novel experience of your hands as some amorphous blob of sensations. Still, the sensations of temperature or pressure, whatever's there, but no longer mapped by your mind in the same way. And so perhaps just flowing together into a singularity. Similarly, you may perceive a boundary between where your hands are and your lap, where they're resting. There may be a map of hands where they end and where your legs, your thighs, the parts of your lap where the hands are contacting, where that begins, mapped as separate surfaces, separate body parts. Notice that map, and again, invite the boundaries to dissolve. Or again, if imagination is your friend here, you might see what it's like to imagine the hand blob melting into the lap blob. There's no boundaries there. Again, like butter just melting into itself, pieces of butter just becoming just one experience, and also full of sensations. finally, let's see what it's like to drop the more subtle maps of hands and lap altogether as body parts. Your mind may still subtly visualize the shape, the size, the function of these parts of your body, even if they feel merged. There might be some mapping there. And again, inviting a softening of that, or perhaps just a visual of space or of energy. Whatever helps your mind just let go of the familiar version of what's happening. Give yourself permission to not know what this experience is, to not visualize it. Whatever you are feeling is what you're feeling and noticing. And you may notice things happening where once there were hands or thighs, there may feel just like energy or space. The size of things can alter, become fuzzy, expand. There's no right or correct experience to have here. Just an invitation to explore what opens up when the familiar canned version is put aside and you're coming into more direct, curious noticing of the sensations. Okay, good. So you can slowly open your eyes whenever you feel ready. And in these transitional moments, it's always interesting to just notice what's happening, because we've done some relaxing work, relaxing familiar structures, prior assumptions about our experience. And sometimes right after the meditation, they can come snapping back into place. You might look down at your hands. Oh yeah, okay, they're still there, But see what it's like to just stay with it. You might even, not look at your hands intentionally for a little bit, even with your eyes open, and see, can I still tap into or kind of soften into the sense of a melting of boundaries and getting more intimate contact with the more subtle sensory experiences without the maps, the structures, the boundaries, the energy, the heat, the pressure-y kind of sensations. Yeah. So, well, thank you for exploring that with me. We have been going through a sequence so far. This may seem like a departure from the sequence, and in my mind, it's still part of it. We'll kind of get back. It's sort of another skill that's part of it. So far we've been starting with body sensations and then dissolving the sense of the room around us and the architecture. And that's a similar kind of genre of work, right? Where there's this way that our mind is structuring things. Neuroscience, they call these like the priors, like the high level priors. Okay, I know the room is there. I know this is the way our predictive hierarchical mind is making sense of reality, right? It's like, I know there's a lamp behind me, and I know I'm in my office, and all this sort of. So we've been working on softening the environment, right? And so last session we were kind of getting into this almost like flotation tanky kind of floating in space, floating in consciousness type experience, letting go of everything else. And of course, the body is still intact, right? So we could also start to turn that inquiry inward into the body, which is what we're doing today, and saying, well, if I can let go of the chair and the walls, what about, my hands and my fingers and the kind of the internal, the body map and the boundaries of the body that we're constantly constructing. And so, it's interesting to imagine the body like butter or like salt, just sort of dissolving into water, butter melting into itself or something like that. And yeah, it turns out that the way our mind constructs experiences, there are these more, you could say, sort of direct, kind of bottom-up sensory processing kind of experiences happening that are very direct and immediate. Just the feeling of a tingle, or something like that, or the feeling of pressure or heat or something like that, even before your mind puts a category on it. And then our mind kind of like constructs that up into, there's heat and it's in the hands, and the hands are shaped this way and this size, and it's my right hand and my left hand, and this is my dominant hand, and this is my, yada, yada, yada. And then it gets even more psychological, right? Where it's like, I have this old scar on my left hand from when I had, a wart when I was a kid and had laser surgery, and and it becomes part of your identity, right? So there's all these things that we're constructing. And it's not that anything is inherently wrong with any of that, right? It's actually amazing, right? It's incredible that we can build out of the raw material of sensory experience, like this whole universe of consciousness, at our fingertips here. It just so happens that, we tend to have an overlearning problem, right? Especially it seems in this culture, there's like such a constant psychologization and an attachment to the sort of default mode network activity. And our mind is constantly running all these simulations of what about this, what about that? And, how does this challenge my identity, or how can I, consolidate this part of myself or something? So there's just a lot of noise in the system. And so a lot of what we're doing, these kind of meditations, is we're sort of shifting the learning, right? Where it's like, okay, I've spent way too much time in my life prioritizing, there's the psychological story at the high level, and then there's sort of like the spatial boundary story at a more subtle, almost like firmware kind of level. That's like the dualistic constructions of things. And so we're saying, okay, let's relax that, and relax, okay, just simple thing, boundaries between fingers. It's really not, it's not too hard. I find most people can do this pretty easily, even just in a few minutes. There's some sense of, if I just, don't think about my hands being separate, they can just kind of blur together. And that's actually a powerful non-dual insight into your direct sensory experience. So yeah, that's kind of what we've been exploring. And, we were just focusing on that area, but obviously you could do this with, all over your body. we'll be doing more of that in future sessions. But anyway, I've spoken enough, so I want to open the floor in our remaining time for any either questions or sharings or troubleshooting, complaints. I'm I'm here for all of it. I'm open to feedback, critique. That's how I learn. So and let's see. Before you can participate, I need to change a few settings here so that you can. I have everything locked down for the recording. So let's see here. All right. So yeah, so you can either chat or you can unmute, whatever you're comfortable with. Yeah. So go ahead. The floor is open. Oh, Leslie, I think you're speaking, but I believe you are muted. That's okay.
Okay.
There we go.
I was going to say, I found this exercise much easier. Like even before you started talking, my hands weren't two separate things. They were just like a blob.
Yeah.
But I have to say, these are amazing exercises. I'm really good. Appreciating them a lot.
Oh, good. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I'm glad they're helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like my inspiration for these has been working with psychedelics because, yeah, when I at some point I was training in the kind of Goenka system, which some of you may be familiar with. It's very focused on the body scan practice. So it's this Vipassana technique where you're going through all the different parts of your body and you're scanning sensations. Very, very powerful technique. And, I think what's the right word? Limitation of it is that you might be actually reinforcing this body map, over and over again with each scan. I think at deep levels that can kind of break down, but at least at a certain level of practice, it's just like, yeah, you're mapping the body, you're visualizing the body. And also the attention's kind of coming from here. So it's very dualistic. So, at some point, working with mushrooms, I was doing that sort of stuff. And then I realized like, oh, this is interesting. My body's dissolving. So what's it like to do a no body scan is how I started describing it. So, okay, I can notice that part of my foot, but also can I dissolve my foot? Oh yeah, sure. What about my ankle? Yep. And then my knee. Yeah. It's just, it's very interesting. Obviously the sensations are still happening because your nervous system's doing what it's doing, but you realize that there's this way that a moment of experience is this kind of layer of constructs. And this is how neuroscience seems to be uncovering it more and more, where there's some kind of, like sensory data that can come in, but a lot of times it's kind of, in a way that the signaling is coming from top down most of the time, where our minds just is sort of, it's a shortcut, right? It makes sense, like from an evolutionary sense, like, you don't want to constantly, it's like the mind wants to make things easy. So it's making these shortcuts, and just kind of the canned version of everything. But it turns out that's not so good for, equanimity and maybe it's a good survival mechanism if you're like a Paleolithic hunter-gatherer or something like that, and you need to just be in shortcut mode. But, if you actually want a relaxed nervous system, it's good to be able to soften that kind of activity and come into this more direct experience, which is really relaxing. And it, I can honestly feel, the melting metaphor I find resonant because it can very much feel like getting into a hot tub of your own mind. It's just, everything's just kind of like melting. And, like I know some people are really into those flotation tank things. And I can see the benefit of that. And I remember at some point after I learned how to do this.
Sensory deprivation type things?
Yes, sensory deprivation with the salt water where you're just suspended. And I know people get a lot of benefit out of that, which it makes sense because I think it can induce this kind of state. And what's interesting is, those are pretty expensive. Those sessions are like pretty pricey, right? But what's great is when you learn how to do this kind of technique, you're basically learning how to access the flotation tank of your own mind. And I remember some years after learning to do these practices, a buddy of mine was like, hey, we should go do a flotation tank. And I was like, okay, sure. Kind of pricey. And I remember lying there thinking like, what a waste of money. I can just do this at home. Like, because it's just, when you just learn how to relax the boundaries, you don't need the environment, to do that.
How would that compare with the, I don't know what you call it, but the dark meditation, you know, where you go into
Yeah,
like a
dark
dark.
retreat. Yeah, I think it's a similar thing. I can't speak from personal experience yet. I'm saying yet because I am on a wait list for for one of the places actually here in Oregon. That's pretty well known. And I did have the opportunity, and then I had to decline because I'm going through a lot of chronic health stuff with my Lyme disease and doing a lot of heavy duty antibiotics. And I thought, this isn't a good time to to do a dark retreat. But yeah, at some point I will get a chance to experience that. But yes, my hypothesis would be, and based on reports I've heard from people like Andrew Holacek, whose work I highly recommend, very very seasoned practitioner with that, as well as dream work and dream yoga and stuff like that. Yeah, I think there's something similar that's happening where when you're not getting the visual input that's creating those boundaries, your mind is going to start to deconstruct itself. Yeah.
Can you put his name in the chat so I can look it up?
Yes. Yes, I can. Let me put that in here. It's Andrew Holacek. And because the chat is not recorded, for those of you watching this on YouTube later, it's it's Andrew, and the name is Holecek. Holecek. I think I'm spelling that right. Yeah, highly recommend his work. Yeah, really interesting stuff. So any other questions, reports? Oh, let's see. Tom, are you trying to?
Yes.
There we go.
It kept telling me the host would not allow me to unmute.
Oh, I thought I had disabled that setting, but maybe I did not. Sorry.
Right. This is reminiscent of some of the meditations I've done with you in the past, so that was a great coming back. But I found that I was stiff, that I had lower back pain that was not going to go away. At first, I was annoyed with that.
Yeah.
Everything else was relaxed, and that was still there and taking my attention. And then I just decided to make that the focus. So I sort of went into that space, that place, and then just was tension, and used that tension as the foreground for all this other stuff. And I was still able to do the melty thing, but I was melting the pain into all these other sensations. So
I love that.
I wasn't getting rid of the pain, but I was still relaxed. I was still following your instructions, and I just found like the pain became the sea. The melting was happening within.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's another thing I forget to say. I should probably say that also. I'm probably going to be adding more and more little intros that you do not have to follow my instructions. And I think I do think that if exactly what you did is exactly what I would recommend to anybody doing these meditations. If I'm focusing on a particular thing, but there is something that is really impinging on your attention, I don't think you should ignore that. I don't think you should try to block that out and do the meditation. I think that's the very thing that you should dive into. So that's exactly what you did. And that is, I mean, what you did is like a textbook perfect way to work with pain, because it is, when it comes up, I often talk about like a hot stove where it's like there's some impulse for us to kind of like this aversive thing of like, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to. But actually, if we keep our hand on the stove, as wild as that sounds, like something happens because you realize even pain, is a construction, right? And the more it deconstructs, it can get very interesting. Pain can be rich, so much sensation. I have lots of chronic pain in my body from years of various illnesses and diseases and injuries. And I mean, it's a lot of tingles and prickles, and there's fire, and there's, all sorts of stuff. So when you get beneath that layer of it being a problem, it starts to become very interesting. And that's a very transformed relationship with it.
Like when you stop resisting it, is that the idea?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, or it's like stop resisting. I guess you could say that. I think of it as almost like it's replacing an avoidance response with a curiosity, an approach. With your attention. The attention is like, I don't want to think about that. And it's like, okay, let's see what it's like to
Kind of like resistance, I think.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, there's all sorts of
You're going
words.
to avoidance. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I see we're getting close to the end of our time here, so I will wrap us up. I just like to say a few words in closing. Well, first of all, just thank you everyone for being here, and for those of you who are going to be watching this later, thank you for watching. And if you enjoy what I'm doing here and you find it valuable, please consider liking and subscribing. As I've said before, I'm really trying to push my subscribers over the 1,000 mark, because once I do that, I can remove the ads, which, ads are not very conducive to meditation. So YouTube will give me that power to do that, which I will be happy to use, because I don't want to monetize this channel with ads. So that I would appreciate that. And also, if you are watching this and you're thinking, oh, interesting, I'd like to go deeper. You can go deeper with me. You can go to my website, unjourneying.com, and you can explore different options to work with me, including psychedelic work or coaching work. And the other thing that I'm actually really excited about is I've been working behind the scenes on creating more opportunities for our community. Because something that I've noticed a lot of times is I work with a lot of individual clients, and so many of them say, there's nobody in my life that I can really talk to about this stuff, because a lot of people just find it too weird, or, I've had this mystical experience or the psychedelic experience. And then I kind of realized, well, gosh, I know so many people that, don't have anybody to talk to. I should bring them together and create a platform. So I found Patreon really, really useful for that, especially because there's many different tiers of accessibility, right? So if you only have, $5 a month, I have a chat thread where you can communicate with folks by chat, and then it kind of goes up from there. And actually, we're going to have this coming Monday, June 1st, kind of a reboot of a group I've led for many years called the Unjourneying Circle. That historically has been a very, very kind of tight-knit, exclusive kind of group. And I've recently decided to make it more accessible by just opening it up to anybody who enters within the Patreon community. And so that's another opportunity it's going to be a different vibe. Instead of the meditation, it's going to be more heart-to-heart kind of connection, support, sharing, dialogue. And we'll be doing that once a month. So something to think about. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And hope to see you next week. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.